Welcome to Artec. Today we'll be demonstrating how to set up and configure the Serv display for the Garmin core system. For the Garmin core system, it is the interface that the end user will be interacting with to control switches, buttons, and lights for the Garmin core system. It is connected to the digital switching unit, the Connect 50, through a NEMA 2000 backbone and network, and that's how the two of them communicate to one another. So by selecting certain switches, buttons, interactions on the display, it will communicate the associated messaging actions on the Connect 50 module. So the Serv display comes in two sizes. We have a 7-inch model that is the default size for the Garmin core system, and then an upgradable 10-inch model for the Garmin core system as well. You can have multiple displays in a single system. You don't have to be limited to one, and you can do either, if you are wanting to do one, either a 7-inch or a 10-inch display. So the first step of configuring and setting up the Serv display is you'll need to download the appropriate configuration files onto a micro SD card. Once those files have been uploaded to the micro SD card gets inserted into a slot on the back of the Serv display. And once the micro SD card is inserted into the back of the Serv display, we want to ensure that the Serv display is receiving 12-volt power. And we also want to make sure that the Serv display is connected to that NEMA 2000 network via a NEMA 2000 drop cable. There's an adapter that plugs into the back of the Serv display that is a 4-pin mini fit to NEMA 2000 adapter that is then connected to a NEMA 2000 backbone cable. So after it's received power, it will step through a setup wizard asking a couple of generic questions, which will ultimately land you on this homepage here. So when setting up a Serv display for the first time using a Garmin core system, we select the settings icon here, which brings us to a main menu where we scroll to find the vehicle integration setting. Once selected, you'll notice that it's a limited menu, only a few different selections. To access the installer settings for the vehicle integration submenu, repeatedly tap this IP address invisible button until we're presented with a dialog box that's warning us that we're accessing these advanced installer settings, which we will agree to. And then we're presented with more menu item selections. So the ones that we are interested in and need to configure are RV controls. So we'll start there. So after selecting RV controls, you'll see there's an Empire Bus logo and a toggle switch. By default, it's toggled off, so we simply need to toggle it on. Then we'll go back. Next, we'll need to set up the Serv display as a CP server. So the Serv display is acting as the network hub, and it is assigning IP addresses to connected nodes within that network. Once the DHCP server selection has been made, we simply save those network settings. And then last on this vehicle integration page, we need to set up the access point settings for the module. The Serv display acts as an access point that broadcasts a wireless signal that other devices can connect to. So if you have, say, a connected VIO display to your Garmin core system, the VIO display will be connecting to the wireless access point that is being broadcast by the Serv display. So we'll set up that Wi-Fi hotspot by selecting access point settings. By default, it'll be turned off, so we'll turn it on. In there, we can name the hotspot a unique name that we know. So we'll name it Artec hotspot. Once it's named, it'll go through a power cycle where it will turn off the access point and then turn it back on. Once it is power cycled, you can see that hotspot name has been changed to Artec hotspot. We can also configure the hotspot password to something that is more memorable and identifiable. So for this instance, we'll name it Powering 2024. Press OK. It'll go through another power cycle, and once that's done, it is now set up with the hotspot name as Artec hotspot and with the password set to Powering 2024. So when on a video display or even on a phone, you can connect to the access point. You'll see it there listed as RTech hotspot. And once connected, you can then use the RV Controls app either on the video screen or on a connected cell phone or tablet. So you'll notice that the Empire bus toggle is still switched on, which was done previously. Next, we will launch the RV Controls. Once the app has loaded, you'll notice an app grid. And on this app grid, there will be applications that you can select to enable or select as the default application for the RV Controls app. There's also a filters column on the right side where you have a series of options. Right now, we're only going to focus on the Empire bus filter, as that's the application filter that is the one used for uploading configuration files for the first time. So what we need to enable are the Empire bus settings and a new application one. Once those two are enabled, we'll press done. Once you press done, you'll notice that those two applications that have been enabled are now populating the app grid for RV Controls. This can be seen if you were to return to the home screen of the Serv display and you press the RV Controls icon on the home page. You will see the two apps that we've enabled and then a refresh button. The refresh button simply refreshes the network, update any changes that have been made. For uploading configuration files to the Serv display for the first time, we're going to select Empire bus settings. Once selected, we're presented a new submenu where we need to select advanced. We'll scroll down and we'll find supervisor. In the supervisor menu, we'll see that there's a graphics and system configuration option. These are the two options that we'll need to use to upload the graphics file to the Serv display and then the logic file to the Connect 50. So we'll start with the graphics. Once graphics is selected, we'll hit upload, select file, and here we're presented with an input box. In this input box, we're going to choose a file that is located on the SD card, which is that graphics compressed file. So we'll select choose file. Once there, we arrive at a recent file screen, which will be empty. We'll need to select the hamburger menu in the top left. Here we'll find the SD card that is selectable. And then once selected, you'll see the core graphics compressed file, and then also the core logic file. When uploading the graphics and the configuration file, the device will not let you select the logic file when uploading graphics and vice versa. So you'll see that the core graphics file is the selectable item here. Another good indicator that the core graphics file is the one that you want is because it's a compressed file, the icon for the file itself has a zipper indicating that it's a compressed file. So we'll select the core graphics file. Once selected, it will populate in the file input box just to see and make sure that it is the correct file that we're uploading, which it is. We'll select OK. And once OK is selected, you'll have an opacity filter that will flash on the screen and then a box that says the upload has been successful. This process doesn't take very long, so it can be easy to miss, but within 15 to 20 seconds after selecting OK, the graphics file should have uploaded successfully. Once the graphics file has been uploaded successfully, we'll go back to that Empire bus supervisor menu, and this is where we'll also upload the logic configuration file for the Connect 50 device. So we'll select system configuration, load configuration, upload configuration, and we're presented with a very similar file input box that we saw for the graphics import. So we'll choose file. It will bring us to the SD card storage menu, since that was the most recent one that we have accessed. Here you'll see that the core logic file is selectable. So we'll want to select the core logic file for the system configuration. This is going to be an EBP file. So to ensure that you're selecting the correct file for this file input box, you just want to ensure that the file extension is .ebp. Once it's selected, we'll hit OK. This will bring you to a new menu where the Connect 50 device and the Serv display are going to communicate to one another and ensure that there is a matched digital switching device in the network that the system configuration file can be uploaded to. This is where you would see the matched units. So we have two matched units, the Connect 50 V2 and then the Connect 50 V2 configuration file that we'll be uploading to it. There will be a match warnings exist. Make sure you want to continue. That warning will always be present, and we'll always want to start with warning. We'll select start with warning. And this upload process typically takes a minute to a minute and a half, significantly longer than the graphics upload process takes. You'll see a similar opacity filter with diagonal lines indicating that the device is updating. If you were to see the Connect 50 device, you'll notice that the LED indicators have C00 present on them. That is an indication that the Connect 50 device is being updated with a new logic file. So during the process of the logic file import, you'll notice a progress bar nearing the end of that upload. That progress bar has two states really. It's a little bit more than half full and then complete. Once it's complete, you'll notice a successful upload dialog box that will pop up for a couple of seconds. And the Connect 50 device itself will go through a power cycle. So a good indication that the logic file has successfully uploaded to the Connect 50 is that any devices that are receiving DC distribution from the Connect 50 will turn off. Once turned off, and once this screen has returned to its previous state without the opacity filter, we can then go back and we can return to the main menu. So from the home screen on the Serv display, what we'll do is go back to settings, vehicle integration, RV controls, launch RV controls. So here you'll notice that when the Empire bus filter has been selected, that we now have two new applications that we can select to enable or select to be the default application for the RV controls app. It's the RTEC app and the switching settings app. So those are the two that we want to enable. We can then disable new application 1, and we can disable Empire bus settings. Once those two are disabled, we'll select done. So you'll notice that the two applications that we enabled now populate in the RV controls app grid. We have the RTEC app and the switching settings app. The switching settings is generally for installers that are looking to further customize and configure the digital switching system. So once selected, you'll see different options that can be configured for the Garmin core system. They're broken up into individual tabs depending on the application of the configuration setting that you're trying to customize. So we have power, HVAC, plumbing, lighting, and switching. Power, a few options like whether or not you have a second alternator in the Garmin core system or an Orion XS. A couple of solar options, whether you have just a primary solar array or whether you have both a primary and auxiliary. With HVAC, we have settings for a heating system as the heat distribution settings. We also have selectable AC units if you have an AC unit present in the Garmin system, which will be selected by toggling this on and then through this rotary switch selecting which model AC you have. Ventilation, where we can have up to 2 max air fans configured for the Garmin core system. In the plumbing setting, if you have any tanks that are being displayed through the Garmin core system, this is where we would configure the type of tanks and how many tanks are present within the system. By this toggle switch, a rotary dial for the number of tanks, and then rotary dials for the type of tank. Next to that, we have 2 channel toggles. These toggles are particular to the plumbing page. So if you have, say, a water pump or a water heater, it would be best to connect those devices to these channels, 28 and 29. That way, when they are enabled, the buttons will show up on the plumbing page. A lighting tab where we can designate different lights as being dimmable, non-dimmable, or off, where we have our 4 interior lights for channels 1 through 4, our 4 exterior lights for channels 10 through 13, our auxiliary lights, which can be designated as either interior or exterior, which are channels 5 and 9. These can also be configured as dimmable or non-dimmable. We also have a setting where if you have a Versi controller, we can have up to 4 zones for RGB lighting. Finally, we have a switching page setting where you can toggle on or off different channels that are being used by the Connect 50 device. Here you have your homepage channels where their buttons would appear on the homepage, your plumbing page channels where buttons would appear on the plumbing page. This corresponds also to the plumbing page tab, where if these are selected correspondingly, these two would be selected. And then finally, the switching page channels that will appear only on the switching page. Once you've made and finalized your configurations for the settings app, we can hit this save button here. Once selected, the save button will show that it's saving. And once it is returned to its default state, you'll know that any settings that have been configured through this application have been saved to the non-volatile memory on the Connect 50 device, which means that if the Connect 50 device was to ever lose power, any of these settings will be saved internally to the storage on the Connect 50 device. So once we've configured those settings, we can see in the RTech app that they're reflected throughout the application. Thanks for joining us today as I walk you through how to set up and configure the Garmin Serv display for the first time. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to our staff. And as always, any relevant links will be in the description.